From the Laconia Daily Sun in 2007. In 1901, the New Hampshire Federation of Women's Clubs petitioned the New Hampshire House of Representatives to establish a school and home for the feeble-minded. In their petition, they ask questions. As a simple act of justice, is it right for the state, the guardian and protector of all its citizens, its children, to discriminate wholly in favor of those who are well endowed, and cast off those who, through no fault of theirs, are lacking in mental equipment? Furthermore, as an act of self protection, is it not the part of wisdom to guard society from the crimes, the vice, and the immorality of the degenerate class, who, with their weak willpower and deficient judgment, are easily influenced by evil? Du Bois emphasized that the Laconia State School was founded on the principle that feeble-mindedness represented not only a cognitive shortcoming but also a moral flaw. The legislature accepted the recommendation to establish the school, and Laconia was chosen from among the municipalities who were actually lobbying to host it. The New Hampshire School for Feeble-Minded Children opened in 1903 with 82 inmates in 3 buildings on 250 acres overlooking both Lake Winniesquam and Lake Opeechee. Originally, the school housed those between ages of 3 and 21, but in 1905 was open to women over 21. By 1910, the school had added a farm, dining hall, women's dormitory, a hospital, but Du Bois said that the overcrowding that plagued the institution throughout its history had set in by 1916, when there were nearly 300 residents. Du Bois emphasized that almost from its beginning, the Laconia State School, like similar institutions in other states, was guided by its principles of eugenics, which held that feeble-mindedness was hereditary and impaired both cognitive functions and moral conduct to cause crime and immorality. Consequently, the feeble-minded should not be segregated from society, but also forbidden to reproduce. In 1915, New Hampshire marriage was forbidden for all men deemed mental defectives, epileptic, imbecile, feeble-minded, idiotic, and insane, and to all women under the age of 45 who fit into the same categories. And 2 years later, authorized the sterilization of those found feeble-minded by the trustees of the school on the advice of 3 physicians. Sterilization was a condition of discharge from the school. It was an easy place to get to, Du Bois remarked, but a hard place to get out of. Lillian Streeter, a founder and trustee of the school, declared, "And feeble-mindedness lies the taproot of most of our social problems. The only effective radical way to deal with these problems is to strike at the taproot with the strong axe of prevention." During the 1920s and 1930s, Du Bois said, conditions at the school, which was renamed the Laconia State School in 1924, steadily deteriorated. During the Great Depression, more and more families with fewer and fewer resources sought to place family members at the school, while the legislature, faced with plummeting revenues, refused to increase its budget. He said that the superintendent's reports brim with the requests for funds to undertake repairs and expand facilities that were repeated year after year. By 1942, the school housed more than 600 residents, served by staff working 51 hours a week in 2 shifts, leaving 1 staff member responsible for 30 to 35 residents. Photographs of the institution from early 1950s show large drafty rooms walled in brick and tile with drains in the floor. Dormitories were filled with beds with no space for personal possessions. Residents had no privacy. There were no stalls in the bedrooms or or seats on the toilets. One building housed 80 residents with one toilet and one shower. Visitors, Dubois remarked on the overwhelming stench. However, Dubois said that the appointment of Richard Hungerford, a teacher, as a superintendent in 1952 marked a turning point in the history of the school, recognizing that parents represented agents of change. Hungerford invited them to visit the school, film the conditions, and to organize for reform. When Help Wanted, a film documented conditions at the school, was shown to the civic and charitable groups around the state, the Portsmouth Herald likened the conditions at the Laconia State School to those in concentration camps of Nazi Germany, which were much in the news at the time. Hungerford increased the time devoted to education and training, took steps to provide more personal privacy, built geriatrics unit, and introduced coeducational activities. In 1953, with encouragement and tutelage from Hungerford, parents formed the New Hampshire Council for Retarded Children, drawing together regional groups which began advocating for improved conditions. Soon Hungerford began running afoul of the trustees, bureaucracy, and lawmakers. Dubois referred to Anna St. John with her history of the New Hampshire Council for Retarded Children, wrote, as his total professional and moral commitment to the retarded came to be understood, he was looked upon with weariness and finally, tragically, with hostility. The accolades had turned to venomous criticism. Despite the overwhelming support of parents and residents, Hungerford was forced to resign in 1960. Hungerford was replaced by Arthur Toll, a teacher from Berlin, but Dubois said that his authority was curbed by the Board of Trustees and was dismantled, and authority concentrated on the Department of Health and Welfare. Although the emphasis on schooling introduced by Hungerford continued, therapies including medication remained the prevalent regime for residents. Numbers continued to climb, topping 1,000 with a waiting list of 400 by 1974. There were never enough staff to support the population the way they needed to be supported, Wass said. The next year, Michelle Dillon, the superintendent of a similar facility in Connecticut, describes the conditions in Laconia as desolate and asked the legislature, will it tolerate its citizens to live in a barren, sterile environment devoid of stimulation? Waugh said that by this time, the question was no longer what needed to be done, but who could take the initiative to change the direction of the school. As before, in 1978, the parents took the initiative by filing suit, charging that the state failed to comply with its own law regarding the division of mental health to establish, maintain, and implement and coordinate a comprehensive service delivery system for developmentally disabled persons. Garrity versus Gallon led to a court order to reduce the numbers at the Laconia State School by immediately placing 235 residents in a group home in the community, but stopped short of ordering the institution to close. The litigation also led to improvements at the school. Buildings were remodeled, staffing levels were increased, and education, training, and treatment changed to prepare residents to return to the community. Meanwhile, efforts began to establish a community-based mental health care system. When Richard Crocker became the last superintendent in 1986, numbers at the school were gradually reduced by stemming admissions and community placements until it was no longer economic to operate. On January 31, 1991, the Laconia State School closed its doors. Dubois said that he has been speaking to professional and charitable groups about the school since 1994.